IVM.
Hey, welcome to Shunya 1. I'm your host Shiladitya and here with my co-host Amit Doshi.
Hello.
Episode 28 lined up for you today. We've had quite interesting feedback on last week's episode.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, the one with Jonathan. A lot of new folks joining on our Twitter channel. Hi to Pinaki, Jubin, Pramod. So basically, I think we're seeing quite a bit of conversations happening, and I hope with today's episode also there will be quite a bit of interesting.
Yeah, this should be really fun.
Interesting feedback because we're going into some interesting topics as well.
Yes, as two dudes, we should absolutely be talking about this stuff.
Yes, but also what happened this week was, yes, we are finally on Savan.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so the show is now on Savan. You should just get the Savan app or the Savan website and get listening there.
Yeah, listen there. Or listen somewhere else, but just listen.
Yes, and of course, please give us any feedback on the Slack channel and onwards to our show. So today we have with us Ankita Tandon, the COO of Coupon Dunya, but also has been doing a lot of other things over the years, which I just got to find out about, which I didn't know before. You actually started your career being a financial advisor.
That is correct.
And you spent 2 years in London. Mm-hmm. And you went to a fancy school there. And then you came back and co-founded your own food tech company way back when people didn't know what food tech was.
When food tech was
when the term food tech didn't exist.
That's true, actually. Yeah, the food tech, it was a different time.
Yes. And then you've been doing all sorts of things at Coupon Dunya. So welcome to the show, Ankita.
Thank you, Sheila.
Yes, thank you for being here. I think you've been jumping around from Bombay to Bangalore quite a bit.
That's right.
Running Quirk at
That's right.
Coupon Dunya.
Yes.
Which we would love to hear about.
Sure.
And also about how it's been being a founder and being part of a large, very fast growth startup, both in Bombay and now Bangalore.
Okay.
Please tell us.
Sure. So let me just give a bit of my background to sort of set context to the conversation, and then perhaps I can get to addressing some of the questions that you just had. So I started off my career in banking. I used to work for Deutsche Bank in London as a financial advisor, and had classic millennial issues start to bother me. That what's the impact I'm making? What am I doing with my life? The incremental difference that I'm making to my company is so minuscule that is it even worth it? So and besides the financial markets, this was 2008 and there was really nothing happening, and
there was a lot happening, but it was going down.
Yeah. In the sense, in the space that I was in, every day you were trying to manage your client's money to make like 10 basis points, which really
didn't make a difference.
It wasn't exciting for me. So I said, okay, let's move back. There seems to be a lot more action happening in India. Moved back to India in 2010 and worked for an Indian brokerage house. It wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't quite enjoy it. And at the same time, the startup space, the internet space in India was just starting to sort of, pick up and, gather steam. So, my roommate from London and we decided that, we used to use this sort of service in London very often. It was called Just Eat, and so we used to use like literally every day. And we said nothing like this exists in India, and so she got a head start on it and started it. And then I joined about a year later, and so we were running Delivery Chef together from 2010 to 2012, and we were perhaps one of the first online ordering. I think we started before when Flipkart started.
I think so.
Yeah, so it was perhaps one of the pioneering online food ordering service in India. And so that was sort of really exciting times, and it was completely throwing ourselves into the deep end because neither of us had a tech background. We were both sort of finance business background, finance trained, but I think what we both really enjoyed was that every day is a new challenge, and that if you really put your mind to it, every single thing that you do is a question of logic and applying common sense and applying your learnings which you've had in a corporate setup, and I think corporate setup sort of brings a lot of discipline to running a startup. So the jugaad aspect is something we had to learn, right?
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting, to do that. And then after 2 years, I got an opportunity to work with Samir, who was a dear friend of mine at Coupon Dunya, and we started working on. I started working on Coupon Dunya with him, and very quickly we got acquired by Times Internet.
Right.
And I think that was fantastic sort of experience to then from working on a smaller scale to becoming part of a large conglomerate, and sort of them opening up their sort of the channels of growth.
Yeah.
So I think it was very interesting from solving problems in my first stint as an entrepreneur with limited resources. So how best can I achieve X with throwing the least amount of resources behind it.
Right.
Whereas in Coupon Dunya, I think resources was not so much the limiting factor. That was not really not an input in your linear programming problem. But how fast can I do this? Can I do this faster? Can I challenge myself to achieve this in the fastest possible manner, as opposed to the most sort of So that was the difference in terms of the experience in operations, really. So Coupon Dunya is an extremely exciting journey for me personally. When we started, we were about 1.5 years into our inception. We became a name to reckon with on the internet space as the premier online couponing and cashback website, and we were number one. We still are number one. And then, but our sort of overvaulting ambition was that how can we make that our customers make the best possible buying decisions in everything that they do. Sort of not just online shopping, but in every single buying decision that they make, how can we make sure that they get the best bang for their buck?
Yeah.
So the natural obvious progression to that was, well, only 1% of retail takes place online. The bigger opportunity is offline. 99% of people's spends are still in an offline setting. How can we target that? How can we get into that sort of wallet space of a customer? And with that in mind, we got into the offline space and said, okay, let's start aggregating deals and discounts for users in the offline space. We started with restaurants and we added in retail. When I say retail, I mean your shops in malls and stuff like that. Basically any transactions that doesn't take place on the internet, offline, brick and mortar stores. Right. So restaurants and retail. So we added in about 8,000 restaurants and about 25,000 retail outlets in 8 cities in a very short time, actually, in about 6 to 8 months.
Wow, that's really quick.
Yeah. And it was and it was, you could fetch the deal from a mobile app. And however, what we found was that it was a very interesting insight that we had, was that people's buying decisions are very divergent from their online buying decisions. So behind a computer screen, people are very comfortable searching for a discount and they want a discount. The second you throw in friends and family around the person, or when the person is in an offline setting, the person doesn't want a discount. He wants to be made feel special. He wants to be treated like a valued customer rather than a discount. So what we found was that people prefer to be called like a valued customer rather than getting a dealer discount. So we realized that model of giving deals was not really
doesn't translate directly like the way people pick up deals on an online space. So we scaled that back within very, very quickly. And with that in mind, we've launched this product that we currently have in Bangalore. It's called the Quirk Card. And we started with restaurants simply because it's the lowest hanging fruit. And I think it takes up about 30% of a person's entertainment spends. We started with restaurants. So essentially it's a loyalty card or a membership card which gets users 25% flat off on food and alcohol every single day at about 75 of the top restaurants. And we've got places like Fatty Bar, Monkey Bar, and all the places that people actually want to go to, right? So we've realized that you can't, in an offline setting, you can't influence a person to make a purchase somewhere unless they already like the place. Right. So if you don't like
Shiv Chaya, even if I give you 80% off, you're not going to go there. You're not going to get up, pick up your bag, walk down the road and go there.
Same with retail. If you don't like a brand, you will not buy it.
Exactly. No matter what the discount is, you're not going to, buy it. So what we realize is, but through this medium, can we build loyalty instead? So if my sort of target, segment is, if as sitting here in Bandra, I think I can go to about 20 restaurants that I would like. Right. But can I narrow this down for a user? Can I narrow it down to 5 places? So then, bringing incremental business to
the 5 places
you got. Exactly. So that's the sort of thought behind, the product we have. And the interesting thing is that subscriptions is opening up in India. I think people are beginning to understand recurring billing. Right. I think in India, people were only sort of used to digital products being on subscription. I think there are now a few physical products that are coming in on subscription. So that's exciting for us, and that's been growing.
So your card will have a subscription fee to it?
Yes, there's a subscription. We basically on a subscription model.
So I'm actually really interested in subscription model. So let me ask you a couple of specific questions.
Sure.
Is this monthly recurring or yearly recurring?
We have both.
Okay.
We have both options, yes.
Monthly recurring, has there been any progress on the card not present transaction stuff?
So I believe that I think below 2,000 rupees, you're allowed to do it. So we're doing it. So
really? Okay.
we're doing it. So we're charging the user on a monthly basis.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I thought that was still very much like you couldn't do
that's payment gateway to payment gateway.
In fact, there
if you can run your own gateway, you can do it.
Oh, okay.
So in fact, there's the new payment gateway. I believe their name is Lotus something.
Okay.
I think they specialize only in subscriptions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think their product is the recurring stack, and so there are a bunch of payment gateways who offer recurring subscription, recurring billing as a service.
Even on your credit card.
Only on your credit card.
Yeah, you can't do it any other way.
You can't do it. So the only debit card that offers it is ICICI Bank at the moment.
Okay.
So you can run recurring subscriptions via credit cards and via wallets. So
wallets make sense, I think. Yeah,
exactly.
that I can see that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Interesting, very cool.
Yeah.
And to comment on that, of course, subscriptions have been a thing for a while now. Everyone's catching on to it. Even at Hipcask, we've been doing this for a while, and not just a subscription, but stored value, right? So again, we see beyond the deals aspect of these things, of these products, which there's an obvious deal and a discount baked in. But the approach, again, I totally agree. The approach has to be a loyalty or a rewards or a approach to how you are treating the customer.
Absolutely. I think users are very particular about the way they are perceived in a restaurant. So imagine, Sheila, if you go out on a date and you say, hey, you know what, I have a coupon, I'm going to be running in the opposite direction.
Oh yeah, please don't order from these items on the menu because they are not covered in my discount card.
Yeah, so perception matters a lot in an offline setting. So you have to approach this sort of problem in a different way in an offline setting. So that's the way we're thinking about it, and it's working. And we're seeing pretty good growth in the product, and we're hoping to sort of start in more cities soon.
Absolutely. And I think, like I said, people are catching on. So obviously everyone's now getting on to the idea. I wonder if there's a threshold though for all these restaurants who get on board with programs like this. There's also a fine line to how long they can sustain. Or how many programs they can.
They won't do it if it's not profitable for them, right? At the end of it, they make individual decisions for each of these things that they decide to do.
Right.
If it's not working for them, I can't see them doing it.
Yeah. So again, my point was you have to be a little selective as well. In terms of who you partner with.
So here's the thing, right? The ones who are doing really well, they're very selective in terms of who they partner up with. And if as a service provider, you are, giving discounts across the board, right? You're effectively just reducing the menu price of everybody, right?
Exactly.
So you're not influencing a user to make a buying decision in any way, which I personally don't think is very smart. And I think a lot of restaurant owners also have echoed this view.
Absolutely.
And basically, the way we built this product was in consultation with these restaurant owners. We went and actually asked them that what is your marketing challenge? What is
Right.
the challenge that you face while attracting customers?
Right.
So given that, and also obviously if taken to consonance what customers want, right? I mean, offering a product which is only valid Monday to Thursday is useless for a user, right? So we've built it, with a ton of learning behind our back, and and hopefully,
So when restaurants, so when you spoke to these restaurant owners and stuff like that, right? So would they, do they try and make sure that they have restaurants in the same category, if you will, or do they want they don't want stuff in the same? How do they look at it? Do they want does the cluster stuff work for them? Do they want to if you have social, do the social want you to have fatty bao, and do they want you to have or do they want you to just have social?
So they're they want people in the same category.
Yeah, same
in the
bracket.
sense, I cannot have a ODP and a fatty bao in the same category,
that's what my
right?
question is,
That they're very particular about. Okay, and also some of the guys, they want exclusivity in their sort of niche. So a brewery would want that I'm the only brewery in the 2-3 kilometer radius around me, right?
Yeah.
So which is fair, and I mean that is
it's a business call.
Exactly. That's how you make that.
That's
call,
exactly what I was saying. You have to be a little. You have to really measure the audience, right,
Absolutely.
on both sides. And a place like Bangalore, by the way, is so full of breweries, first of all, and people really love to go out there. I think that's just a growing population.
See, in the long run, a product has to provide value for all its stakeholders, customers and restaurants alike. It cannot. I don't believe it should be very heavily sort of biased towards one side, because then the other stakeholders get annoyed and they start to fall off. That's my view. So I think you have to kind of be in that sweet spot, and that sweet spot is not hard to find. So you have to find that sweet spot, and which is why O2O has. I don't think anyone has done O2O, well in in the Indian context so far. It's a very tough space to operate in, and because you need to have physical presence, right? It's not just solved behind a computer screen.
Right.
So we're excited with the traction growth we're seeing. So
Is it coming to Bombay soon?
we hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll be the first to know.
Great. And of course, there's always some more folks trying it out. I know Zomato Golds launched this week. We're all waiting and watching and to see how
Absolutely.
those guys do it. But from early signs, I think restaurant owners are not happy.
No,
Restaurant owners are not happy right now.
I think restaurant owners have this amazing love-hate relationship with Zomato. It's kind of intense how much they love them and how much they hate them at the same time.
So I think
I spoke to a few over the week and they're like, I'm running it for a week and then we'll see. So
Well, I think that actually is an opportunity for a non-interested third party, right, in that sense, because they all feel there's a conflict with Zomato, right? They
Exactly.
I don't know if you saw, there was this crazy thing that happened over the weekend in Pune. Some restaurant guy went nuts on Zomato reviews. So he started calling the people who gave him bad reviews and started saying that,
I did not see
can you do this, and I'm going to sue you and this and that. So I mean, there's a lot of
wow, Pune restaurants have had a bad
month.
had their fair share of
Yeah, they've had a bad
controversy.
month, yeah.
excitement. No. So Zomato is actually, I'd say, a formidable competitor.
I would think so, yeah.
And it would be foolhardy to think that that it's not something to be
No, I agree with you. But
Right.
just to come back to what you were
Yeah.
saying, right, where you need to keep all stakeholders happy.
Absolutely.
I feel like the thing with Zomato is that there's always a hardened feeling towards it, right? Whereas in the case of your card, when it comes here, people don't have that same kind of
hesitation.
antipathy or
Sure.
pro,
Sure.
either way, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, so having said that, I mean, I think Zomato, to give them credit where it's due, I think they've done a fantastic job in, in sort of becoming the one-stop name for, when it comes to restaurants. And I think credit where it's due. I think they've done a good job, and they've thought about their business sort of in a very sort of methodical, and they've built it extremely well.
Yeah.
But having said that, Zomato is always going to be only about food. So where sort of we want to be, I mean, we already have spa salons as part of the mix. The center stone of the product will always be restaurants, but we will always have spa salons, gyms, health and beauty as part of the mix. And I think there's a lot of ways that we could sort of we wish to take this product, go one level up. Kind of think of it like, say, UberX has an Uber Lux and has Uber Go model, and you go one level below for, like, say, students, say, where you have QSRs as part of the mix.
Very interesting.
Or even even take it to like a women-centric product, where you have coffee shops and offer blow dries and mani pedis and things like that. So there are lots of sort of applications or extensions possible to this product. Zomato will I think only be about food.
Right. I'm going to sound like a dumbass right now. What is a QSR?
Quick service restaurant.
Restaurants.
So you have like your McDonald's and
the chains, the small and quick service chains. Basically.
Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I don't think I had heard the QSR as
it's a very food. It's a very food tech term.
No, hey, you're the food tech expert.
But great, wow! So then let's hope Quirk finds its way here finally.
Yeah, I hope so too.
You get to spend more time in Bombay, maybe. Although I know you love Bangalore.
I love Bangalore.
And so, in fact, like I was saying, we ask everyone who's been on the show about whether you've ever thought of moving your team there. How's it like there? What do you think? We've gone through a lot of flows of people moving to Bangalore, but I think there's a resurgence.
You're asking a spoiled South Bombay brat why she's not moved to Bangalore.
Well, or moved your team there while you manage remotely.
No. In all honesty, we did. We tried to move our team to Bangalore. So I think about 3 years ago, we said that Bangalore is the hub for tech and for internet-based companies. So we got an office there. We said, okay, let's we'll hire our tech teams there, and we got it to about sort of, I think 50 people.
Wow.
But what we found was that the talent there was perhaps maybe 10% better in terms of skill, but it was very hard to retain the talent there, given that there are so many. And this was like when funds were really, really easily available, and people were being
the heydays of 2015,
right? And people were being picked up at exorbitant salaries. So it was very hard to retain talent. Of course, there's a demand for that talent. So we felt that we're fine in Bombay.
Yeah.
We're doing okay, and so we didn't move the team. So we wanted to, but we didn't end up moving.
Yes,
and infrastructure, and I've gotten into debates with people about infrastructure. I'm sorry, infrastructure in Bombay is way better. So, so I think that was the
I think the only people who don't think there are people from Bombay.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody who comes from out of town is it is so much better.
Delhi used to still, by the way, hold a card, but I think every year for the last winters they're just losing it. So I think we have Bombay in a good standing.
I think the traffic here just moves, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's no gridlock, right? I mean, you're always moving, even if you're in terrible traffic.
Look at you two South Bombay folks. Look at you two who have to come to the suburbs every day.
Do you smell the privilege?
Yes.
I know. It's good to hear this. I feel so indebted that you guys come to the burbs every day.
Man. I mean, hey, listen, someone's got to do it.
Of course.
We have to take care of you people out here.
Yeah, show you guys some class, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On that note of privilege, we'll take a break and come back and talk some more.
Over 47% of online users in India have experienced harassment at some point. So if it's two of us inside this recording studio, chances are pretty high that one of us has faced abuse at some point. How do we tackle this? What do we need to do better? Come, let's learn together. Join me on Akanksha Against Harassment at IVM Podcasts every Thursday. Let's learn how to make online a safe place together.
All right, welcome back, guys. So, Amit, I hear today I found out that you and Ankita knew each other for a while.
Yeah.
And Ankita has a lot of stories on you about how you have been a blasphemous Jain.
Blasphemous Jain? That would imply that I am a Jain in some ways, some shape or form.
So I know a lot of my friends who come on the show apparently have a lot of
Fun
dirt on
stories.
me,
Yes.
but I will definitely ask Ankita to give me some dirt on you for future withholding.
Okay, that's all right. I think I think most of the dirt that Ankita knows about is fairly safe.
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
pretty kosher.
Because
Yeah.
I'm actually friends. I mean, like, I've known her forever, but I'm actually friends with her dad.
That is true.
Oh, really?
That is true.
So
Oh, really?
yeah, so I mean, like, she would have gotten sanitized versions of stuff.
I see.
Definitely.
I see. All right. Interesting. Okay. So onwards to what I was also wanted to talk to you about, Ankita. So you've, like I was saying, you've been a founder early
Yes.
on. You've been a female founder with a female co-founder.
Yes.
Starting a startup before startups were cool.
Startups.
Startups, yeah.
It's like, you didn't have enough challenges. So, but listen, now I know we live in times when there's so much discussion around all of these discriminatory challenges,
Yes.
all of these harassment-related issues.
Yes.
You've been on this, various seats
Yes.
throughout your career. I really wanted to talk to you about what you've seen. What have you seen as
Sure.
a challenge personally, or your others you've seen
Sure.
in your workspace? What's it been like? Like, as a founder, do you see any challenges in India? Then in the workplace, does this still happen? Like, because I feel we don't talk about it at all. In fact, on this show yet, and also.
Because out of
Perspective.
27 episodes, we've had 3 women.
Also the perspective matters, right? I mean, right now, a lot of people, all of us, myself included, only have like Twitter arguments with folks and outrages, and it's armchair
Yes.
journalism season. So
Yes.
what has it been really like? If you could help.
Sure. So, this is a sensitive topic. So, before we sort of jump into it, I just want to give the summation of my thoughts so that it sort of it's a caveat to to what I'm going to say, and because we don't want outrage starting, right? So yes, there is discrimination. Yes, there isn't equal pay for equal work. Yes, there is clearly a disadvantage for female-only founding teams, and we see that day in and day out. But I don't want to get into what's got us here, or why this is today, and it's because of generations of let's not get into that sort of aspect
Sure,
of it.
sure.
Let's try and talk about what we can sort of do to address
Yes.
these things, or sort of what's the way forward from here. So like I said, yes, there is all of these issues and there are all of these challenges that exist, but I think it's a tad bit unfair to say that men should shoulder the entire responsibility of making that change happen. And so what I want to sort of touch upon today is about what we as women can do to change these perceptions that that exist for women, or these stereotypes that exist, break those. And I think we need to shoulder that responsibility equally, which a lot of women don't do today. So to give an example, when we were fundraising, and we got a lot of polite turndowns, but because we it's a pretty small community, and you're connected. The feedback that we got through the back channels was that female only founding team, bacha paida kar lengi, and then it's not going to happen, and so there was all this outrage, that used to be there, I felt outraged that like, how can you say that? And I've been asked point blank by women investors that, when you plan to get married, let me check my calendar. It's none of your goddamn business is when I'm getting married. But these were the questions that were asked, and we were positively outraged. Having said that, I have seen in the last 6 years a lot of women founders who have raised money give up their roles and taking care of and walking away from their businesses, which I think is unfair. It's not unfair that you're choosing a child. It's not. I'm pro-choice.
Right.
It's fine. It's totally cool that you've chosen.
To have a family.
To have a family, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. But I think we live in a capitalistic society, right? Like someone has given you their money not because of the milk of kindness of their heart, but because they want you to grow that, that money for them, and they want you to find an opportunity or build a business. So I think it's a tad bit unfair to do that, and you're doing a disservice to all women around you, because then that investor or those investors will not fund,
There'll
women
be a
entrepreneurs.
hesitation.
They'll have
A hesitation will creep into their decision making.
Absolutely. And I've seen that happen a lot. A lot. And I think so if you are going to choose that, make sure you have like a bridge option, or someone who will,
take over your
responsibility when you are sort of, not going to be around or cannot devote your full-time attention. So, and I don't know. I mean, our counterparts in the Valley seem to do it a lot better than us, and I think they seem to bounce back, and I would imagine that, we should also try to, make that happen, here. So
basically be fair to what you are being asked to do, right? Especially when you're raising money, you have a responsibility.
I think you have a I don't know what the term is, but maybe a fiduciary responsibility to the person that you've taken money from. So I think it's important that that you're careful about that.
At the same time, there is also a movement around the fact that in order to what you were saying earlier, in order to balance the scales, because they have been so imbalanced all this while, there should be there should be pro woman policy towards all this. I don't know how that will all fit, but I agree with you. If everyone changed all at once, it would just work, but everyone doesn't.
So it's a really tough debate, right? It's a really grey sort of area we're going into. There's no rights and wrongs. Everyone has a choice to make. So this maternity policy that came in, and that really makes me scared, because for women, So I think there were a lot of women who were, jumping up with joy. Sure, it's great for big companies, corporates, and, the government organizations. It's great. But in our sort of context, in startups.
High growth tech and high growth startups.
Honestly, when you're in a startup, you're actually thinking about, will I be able to pay salaries for the next 6 months? And then if I have to pay for someone for 6 months, that's brutal, almost crippling. So here's what I fear. I fear that it'll get priced in, right?
Yeah.
So, again, and then it will widen that gap, that pay gap even further. Yeah. Or even worse, where people will choose not to hire women because they look of a certain age and they feel that,
that's what's happened. That's what's
that's heartbreaking, right? I mean,
I think the other thing that can happen is you start seeing a lot more contracting work happening rather than like their employment work.
Exactly.
Because that also becomes part of this. And
yes,
contracting is. There's nothing wrong with contracting, but it's different than employment, right?
Absolutely.
So then you start seeing a lot of that.
So coming back to this topic as well, I've been talking to a lot of people in this space, and a lot of people say that 8 out of 10 women don't come back after maternity, and a lot of them have literally just joined the organization 2 months before they tell you that hey, I'm gonna. So here's the thing, right? Like you've just joined a company, and they're expected to sort of hold down a job for you for 6 months, and then you don't come back. And so I think getting in these reforms have been sort of it's like I don't think they've thought it through well. So I think, if you want to give 6 months...
Our government hasn't thought through a policy? Does that really happen?
No, but see, this what you're talking about is also people taking advantage of the system. Right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying women, be fair. You're being fair to you're being unfair to other women by doing this, because this really sort of puts a bad taste in an employer's mouth, and simply can't afford it.
True.
In a startup context, right? So be fair to the other women around you who are actually trying to sort of work through and make a living for themselves. So don't do that. Don't spoil things for other women around you. If you think you're not going to come back, don't take the benefits. It's as simple as that. Or I know it's a sort of a gray area, and there are lots of
so again,
nuances to it. But
there are no easy answers here, because there is a lot of.
This is like expectation that everyone will be fair, but everyone is not.
Yes, it's not. But having said that, it is a biological sort of progression of our species, right? Women will have children; they will take time off. Companies also have to be fair, but you expect them to be fair, right? So they are sort of paying, for a few months for you, but I think you need to be fair in return as well. So that's sort of my, sort of 2 cents to this.
I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, like there is. As much as you want to be pro female hiring and stuff like that, right? I mean, like there are, it's a really difficult thing to just kind of like not think about it, right? You want, and that's the goal, right? It should not be. You should, when you're looking at a candidate to hire, you should not be thinking male or female.
Yeah.
You should be looking only qualification.
But
it's almost impossible to not think about,
because there's a financial implication to it, right? And I think it could have, like, they should have opened up this policy to after a certain sort of size of company, and given these benefits after a certain number of years of service. So so you're entitled to this privilege if you have put
sense,
in your
right? If you're somebody who's worked with you for 2 years, and then at that point in time, of course you got to support the person who's worked with you for 2 years, right? It would be ridiculous not to.
Yes.
I agree. And if you're a company which has 100 people, at that point in time also, it is ridiculous for you not to offer those benefits.
Absolutely.
But if you have a team of 8 people and one person disappears, and that's 16% of your workforce.
So I think it comes in after 10 people, but still, I mean, your point is absolutely valid. Yeah, absolutely valid. Yeah.
Just to come back to the extension of this point, it's not just about, of course, maternity leave, right? There's also other aspects, like people, so again, women get discriminated because they assume that, again, startup tech context, high growth, intense work hours, working beyond late into the night.
Yes.
A lot of women, obviously, again, because of our society being unsafe, say, I can't do late hours, I can't go home at night, unless you provide me other services. Again, very fair, but influences hiring decisions again, right? Influences how efficient your team is in, again, the tech context. So there are so many more levels like this where, again, it's very, very individual whether a woman joining the team can
I ask the question, right? I ask everybody the question, are you okay with extended hours? I mean, like, if they're going to work here, they have to be, right? I mean, like, when I have hosts like you who want to record at 8 o'clock in the evening on Friday evenings, I have to have people who are willing to,
Wow, okay.
This.
That came back on me.
No, but I mean, like, it's a question you have to ask the question, right? But I don't, and I've had just as many men tell me it's a problem as women.
So I would agree with Amit on this one. I haven't seen, the hours, be such an issue, like at least in the tech context, because we're hiring, at least so I've been exposed to Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, and these company startups in these 3 cities where people are, or women are comfortable working long hours. I think the issue, with the sort of balance here, I feel, is the bro culture that sort of exists in the startups, which, I mean, we need to really, really do something about, and that's real, and it's really, really prevalent. And I just
what is bro culture? Since we're on the topic, no, seriously, because again, there's a flip side to it, but let's really address this bro culture thing. How does it develop? What happens, and why is it? And how do you really snip it in the bud in an organization?
The way I look at it is like just basically the guys going out together and doing stuff together and excluding the women. Does that sound about right?
That's one aspect of it. Okay. I don't know.
I'm not the, I mean, like, we have an expert. We should have somebody who
bro
deals
culture
with it.
is sort of, so that what you said is the small part of it, but I think the larger part is cracking inappropriate jokes, passing comments, and just being inappropriate in a workspace, which you probably you might sometimes think of passing it off as banter, but and I think that primarily sort of happens because I think a lot of people come from engineering schools, and where the ratio is the ratio over there is also very sort of skewed, already skewed. But in a professional, I don't think what we're doing correctly is transitioning from a college environment to a professional environment. So that banter, that making women uncomfortable by saying certain things, even if if both of you guys are talking about something, even if it doesn't involve me, but simply me being in earshot, it's not cool. Right? A lot of things that are said, done, is not cool. So I'll give an example for for better clarity. This happened in a friend's organization, and there was this. attractive young girl who came into the office. I think she was selling credit cards or something like that. And these two boys found her pretty attractive, and they started discussing amongst each other that, hey, she's quite cute. Let's chalo gedi marne jate hain, or essentially saying that let's go and try our luck.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a female, lady who overheard it. So one, that makes her uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if you're talking like this about other women, God knows what you're saying behind my back when I'm not listening, or you're making the people.
It's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful, right? And on the second count, you are walking up to a woman who is trying to do her job.
Right.
She is being a thorough professional, and in her professional sphere, you are trying to mislead her by showing interest in her product, but you clearly have no interest in her product, and you're just being a douchebag.
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely. And on the third side, you're actually representing a company, right? When you are in the office, you're representing the company that you're at. Yeah. And this lady is going to walk out, and if you say something which is even borderline inappropriate, she's going to walk out and having an impression about an entire company because of two people's actions, right? Yeah. So the example I've given is a very, very small example.
Right.
10x worse things happen, right?
Just from there, we can all extrapolate on
the kind of stuff the kind of stuff that happens. This is an example that I was discussing with a friend of mine that happened in their organization. So I think all of us need to do a better job in coaching, the younger lot that comes in on what is appropriate conduct in the workplace. What is consent? A lot of people just don't understand consent, right? Yeah. And getting into relationships in a workplace. All these things are just something that's not addressed early on in people's lives. And it results in the kind of things that we're seeing, so many, instances showing up these days, So, I mean, it's tough.
But that's what you've said was actually on point, right? It's actually about not just enforcing a law or a rule or something like that. It's also, I really like the fact that, yes, when you're hired as a guy right out of college, now addressing college is a whole different discussion, but okay, fine, you were a kid, you were a douchebag in college, but now you're being paid to work somewhere. You have a responsibility towards your other colleagues, your company,
absolutely,
and women in general. I mean, you should be an adult.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah, you need to be a grown up.
But it's the company has to do that coaching. So that's again another additional effort on the company side.
That's culture, right? If you want to create the right culture,
that is the right culture. So there's no avoiding that or hiding behind that. It's expensive to do. No, we have to do it. We have to do it.
Yeah, even if it's 3, 4, 5 people. I mean, you want the right culture. You don't want people to kind of So I mean, I'd say that's something you gotta.
So I think you can't take away from the fact that there is benefit in having balance in the organization in terms of having gender balance, right? Women inherently bring certain qualities and men bring certain qualities to the table, and a combination of the two is what sort of makes a great company, right? So it is, we have to solve for this. We have to solve for this, discrimination, bro culture, and just simply making women feel comfortable and in a workspace, right? And are women in your office comfortable, walking up to you and telling you about what they're facing? Like a lot of companies where the senior leadership, there is no female in senior leadership, a lot of women are uncomfortable even talking about small things, So are you doing enough to make the women at a junior level, comfortable about, whatever issues they may be facing? Or,
It's also changing these perceptions of, just to add to another point of yours, right? The way you make people comfortable is also by changing everyone's perception of what is right now stereotypical. Like, just to say, maybe it's an extension of the bro culture thing. Like, when a guy is really, he's aggressive, he's a go-getter, he's these are the terms you qualify for a guy who's really engaged and always speaking his heart out. But when a woman does that, you have a different...
Yeah, you have a pretty interesting adjective for a woman who's aggressive, right, in the workplace, right? And if she's too nice, then she's just too soft. She's a pushover. Absolutely. Yeah. And if it's a guy, he's such a nice guy.
He's so accommodating.
He's so accommodating. Such a pleasure to work with.
Again, doesn't this come down to culture to an extent?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you are...
I think more than culture, this is a stereotype, right, that exists, right? So women actually struggle. I know I have. Women struggle to find a professional persona, right? They struggle to find that balance of how should I conduct myself in a workspace? Should I be like the smiling face, the really, really nice person, but then I don't want to, be branded as the nice lady, who and then get saddled with other people's, dirty work.
Yeah.
Or do I want to be this aggressive person and, so sometimes women tend to overcompensate, against their natural sort of behavior to sort of not come across as soft and,
Wow, yeah. But then that's not being yourself. Which is exactly the problem, right?
So that's what I'm saying. So women really struggle to find, I know I did, right? And it's only with maturity that you sort of find your space and your sort of natural operating style, right? And the natural operating style might differ from company to company, right? So so it's very interesting, how you need to accommodate women in a workspace, and I think simple things at companies. I mean, it's required by law to have a harassment committee, but we need to go beyond that, right? Like, I mean, setting a committee, putting 5 names on it, it doesn't cut it, right?
People need to feel comfortable inside the company.
Exactly. I think what people need to start doing is just having general closed door chats with women and the men, of course, men and women in terms of what is appropriate conduct in the workplace, and making the women feel comfortable in coming up to you when they have a problem, right? And and simply like things like name calling and stuff like that is just not done. And here women are to blame equally, it happens. So the second you see a woman rising in the ranks, the other women will be like, we know what she did to get there. Those are the things that happen. This is real. This is not just in the movies. It really happens, right? So first of all, women, don't do a disservice to yourselves. Please don't bitch out your colleagues. If someone's progressing, be supportive. And I think that's extremely, extremely important. And of course, it's an absolute no-no, in a workspace. If the second you're name calling and you are personally insulting someone, there's something wrong with you and not with the other person, right?
I agree.
And so I think...
Now, this culture setting is absolutely the way to solve all of this, and it has to be done early on. I think
it needs to be part of the company.
I mean, look at what's happening in Uber, and there's a ton of companies that is kind of
it's all over the place. I mean,
it's all over the place.
There's no behavior there's no industry that is safe from this behavior. I mean,
I'll tell you, the thing is that when you're such a high growth company, like say Uber and all of the companies in our space, you get a capital injection and then you're expected to run, so stuff like culture, and things like that take a back seat.
Right.
And you grow so fast, and before you know it, you're from 20 people to 200 people. I know we did that. We were from 20 to 200 in about a year and a half tops, which is huge. Yeah. So stuff like culture, stuff like, what is the right policy? Would you have a dating policy? All these things, they tend to take a back seat. In the workspace. But I think they are crucially important. You need the founder especially, and the culture flows from the top. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
You have to take the time to, set these things in place. Else you're just building a Jenga tower, which, will fall over and fall bad.
And I mean, again, not all of it for a small startup also. Not all of it can be put in policy, but like you said, I think the founder is anyway solely responsible for setting these standards in whoever he hires or she hires, right? And it flows from there. So the more core this can be to your personality and to your standard of ethics or standard of how you want to run things, the better it will be. So that's I think that's what really needs to happen. And for large organizations, as we are seeing worldwide, the ones who didn't do it and the ones whose founders were not.
It's
unceremonious fall from the top, right?
It's all over the place. It doesn't matter what industry you're talking about. There are problems in every one of them. I mean, like politics. I mean, like there was just a video came out from like women who are members of Congress, right, in the US. I mean, like all of them talking about how they've been harassed while they were members of Congress.
And the interesting thing here is that these are women of privilege, education, who have the courage to come out and speak about it. What happens to the janitor?
Yeah.
What happens to, people of, different races? People who are just not that powerful or economically stable to come out into the open and say, this was happening to me.
Yeah.
So the problem is absolutely, it's like a cancer. It's everywhere, and we need to. You can't turn a blind eye to it. You can't say that, we're a company of 10 people. This doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Matters.
It matters, and if you are able to set it from the word get-go, you will be able to, scale it.
As people come in, if they see what is happening in the company and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, that stuff just hardens, right? I mean, if name calling is not acceptable, right? And then the people who come in, they'll see that nobody else is, so I cannot, right? But if all of a sudden you start seeing people sitting aside, making comments, whatever that may be, right? I mean, then all of a sudden, okay, that's what we do over here. And I mean, you can't.
And making comments on clothes, on, figures, not acceptable.
No, you cannot do that.
Not acceptable, buddy. You can't do it.
No, so I know there is a certain amount of reeling it in, which definitely needs to happen as far as how. Again, in the context of how fast growth companies have been of late, definitely there are some things you can't help, like the gender ratios may still be skewed, especially if you're growing.
These issues are not going to get solved in like a week, right?
Not at all.
Exactly. So those
like
hiring issues have to then address that. You have to address the fact that, hey, you might have more guys in the company, and hence all the more you have to
so I heard
be careful about
really interesting, right? So after all this Harvey Weinstein stuff happened, right? So I heard about how J.J. Abrams, right, the guy who does Star Wars, so in American football, they have this thing called the Rooney Rule. Okay, the Rooney Rule is basically that you have to interview a black coach no matter what for any job opening.
Okay.
He's done that for his production company. No matter what the job opening is, I have to make sure I interview at least one woman for that job opening. And basically, it's led to a dramatic increase in the number of women that he has working for him in his company.
Wow.
And it's a really kind of, you set the rule, you have to do this no matter what. Now, you're not going to hire, just because you're interviewing a woman doesn't mean you're going to always hire a woman.
Right.
But at least it opens up the position to a number of different things, right? There are a lot of different people who can come in and look at, you can look at it from like a bunch of different perspectives.
That's a very interesting sort of way to approach the problem, that, that you necessarily have to interview either a particular race or a particular gender for a role. So to give an example, what happened I remember at Deutsche Bank ages ago, they gave a mandate that X number of women have to be part of the MD cohort. And interestingly, that backfired. I'll tell you why. Because it was a mandate to fill a position with a female and not necessarily the right sort of candidate. They ended up promoting women who were not yet ready for the role.
Right.
And then they failed in their role. And then it was like, women are not good enough, right? So that was a disservice that happened towards women, right?
Very interesting. That's exactly the reason why they came up with this Rooney Rule, because what they said was so in the NFL context, the reason why they did this was at least the coaches who you are interviewing will get exposure to the interview process. Right, because the interview process itself is such a big deal in these kind of things that just getting exposure to the process means that the second time you go for an interview, you'll be much better prepared. And
Absolutely. So that's a very, very interesting way. In fact, I think I'm going to apply it immediately to our hiring process. I think
why not? It's actually a very easy rule to apply.
Very easy. Very easy. You necessarily want to interview, of course, hire on merit, no questions about it.
Merit,
no questions about it. But, interview more women, absolutely.
Wonderful. So there's obviously so much more context to this discussion we could get into. One more thing, since we touched upon it briefly, while there is this, while the founder and everyone else at positions of power, as they say, right, have a ability to change these dynamics. At the same time, I remember when policies like this do exist, like they've existed, you can't date someone and you can't do all that. There have also been cases where, especially in the startup context, you're meeting a VC, you are a startup founder, and obviously you may get a yes, you may get a no, whatever, but that professional relationship may at some point get disturbed by the gender dynamic. Now, when that happens, or if that happens, how, and this has happened in the Valley, and I think the Valley people have taken a really hard stand on it that,
A
hey,
bunch
no,
of guys,
there is, if you're a position of power, you cannot date. I'm sorry, because you're coming from a position of power and you'll always be perceived as that person.
Absolutely.
So if you're, let's say again, in the VC founder context, if you're a VC, you cannot date someone who is a founder who approached you for funding.
Correct.
That will just not happen.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. I think so. I have gotten
Even though it may be, you both want to do it or whatever, consensual.
But I mean, like, it's still
it'll still be perceived as
there's an ick factor to it. I mean, like, no matter how you look at it.
I think the way I think about it in my head, and I've had heated debates with a lot of my friends on this, saying that, hey, so are you telling me that a VC, who is a single, unattached person can't date? And I said, no, that's really not it. That's not the point. The point is the context. In what context or in what capacity do you know this person, right? So I think there was a very interesting sort of debate. There was a founder who reached out to a VC. VC turned her down, and in a subsequent meeting / conversation, the founder said, okay, since the VC said that since I've said no, this is fair game. And it turned out that the lady didn't like it. And, she called him out on it. And he says, well, I'm a hot-blooded male. I mean, I
that's
said
actually
no to
what
her.
started all this Silicon Valley issue.
So the point is, the context of your association, your relationship is still professional, right?
Yeah.
So even though you said no, so I mean, as founders or as people who run companies, we are trained to to say that you keep hitting at the wall hard again and again and again and again till it breaks,
No
right?
doesn't mean no.
No doesn't mean no, right? Right? In this context, right?
In this context, I said it as I said. I was like, what am I saying? But
No, really, in this context. So we've been told that VCs very rarely invest in you the first time they meet you, and you have to keep meeting them over and over again, keep updating them of your progress. So, you know what? The context in which this person knows you is professional.
Yeah.
So you cannot do it. And you pointed out, absolutely right, Sheila, that position of power, right? It's very easy to coerce someone into a relationship, whether consensual or not, if you're in a position of power.
Yeah.
So I think when young girls walk into an office, I think they're pretty starry-eyed, and they're very impressed by very senior male bosses.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for them to get coerced into a relationship. You just
or
shouldn't be doing
think that, I'm attracted to the person.
Right.
Whereas
Exactly.
the reasons for that attraction may be misplaced.
I mean, so these are sort of separate debates, but still, I mean, I just think.
So again, it's the founder responsibility to ensure that doesn't happen.
It's the founder responsibility to ensure that you don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are enough fish in the ocean,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like why like
exactly. Why would you ever?
You want to meet
dilute the
people,
point,
ask your friends to set you up on dates,
Exactly.
or you go to a bar, like, or or pull out your phone and swipe right, like, I don't know. But no, the thing. So in a workplace, very, I would just say as a blanket rule, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
I
just
agree.
and having said that, it is so common. Workplace relationships are so common, and it's natural to an
You
extent
spend so
because
much
you spend
time
so much time. But I think. So a lot of places, so we have a dating policy, right? Like, so we allow you to date so long as you disclose the relationship,
Okay.
right? Why does that exist? And funnily enough, we find that a lot of people don't disclose it, right? And even though it's in plain sight, we can see on a relationship, but why aren't you disclosing it? I'll tell you why we do it, right? So one is that obviously a manager and his subordinate shouldn't be in a relationship.
Right.
Basically, two people who
one reports to the
one
other.
reports to another, and one can sort of impact their
Right.
career growth, in either way, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't happen. And so that you simply protect against any kind of harassment charge in the future, right? Like, or, so that we know that, this was the case. So I don't know why people don't report it. I don't know what is the embarrassment or what is
It
hesitation
makes
reporting it.
This is what so in my old company, where again I had like significant number of people, and I had like actually 3 sets of employees get married eventually.
Right.
But over there, the reason why for not reporting what was always said that the second we report it, it's official. And it's
a whole different problem.
Yeah, it's official, and then we have this weird relationship. So that was this IT services company, right? So I had a bunch of people coming straight from college.
Right.
A bunch of people coming for interviews with their parents sitting outside. I had a bunch of like that kind of stuff happening, right? So there is this assumption that they tell the office and parents will find out. And it was ridiculous. I mean, like, I'm like, we're not gonna talk to your parents. You work for me. Your parents don't. I have nothing to do with your parents.
Yeah.
But it was still like, it's a thing. It's official.
Right. No. So yeah. I mean, I guess it's acceptable if you're at sort of the same hierarchy and in different teams.
Yeah.
So that's
actually
I think
what's more important.
That's acceptable. But and you shouldn't be. I mean, and if things go south, you don't want to be working in the same team, and you don't want that. At least you want your company to support you. Like, okay, and if you don't disclose it, like suddenly you say, I don't want to work with this girl, and I'm just like, why not? What happened? Like, did something go wrong? Did she do something? Did you do something? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
So you're confusing an employer. So guys, if you have a dating policy, just go and tell your company, and we don't judge. Like, relax.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So I think that's that thing.
All of this, right? All of this is like seriously something everyone needs to consider. I mean, everyone in a position of power as a founder, whether you're an employee, if your company doesn't have this policy, you should
have it.
Get that cleared out.
Yeah.
And obviously setting culture. I think these are...
culture is very important.
Yeah, one of the most important things, which, especially from a tech and a startup point of view, which matter.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Ankita. I think we you made the serious discussion very well laid out. Thanks for that. And
no worries.
I hope this will be interesting for a lot of people to hear.
I think it will. This is a great conversation. Really, we got into a lot of stuff that's really kind of interesting right now.
All right.
It was a pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And we will keep you posted on a lot of feedback on our Slack channel.
Yeah, so we got quite a bit of that. We got some feedback. But hey, if you want to be a part of the Slack channel, go to the website, ibmpodcast.com/Shunya1. There's a big button over there saying join the Slack channel. Click on that and we will send you an invitation.
Yes.
And besides that, the other thing is the 5-star reviews on iTunes. Please do that. And as I mentioned, 25 5-star reviews and I'll get a funny picture of Sheila Ditya on a hat.
Wonderful. And Ankita, obviously people can find you on Twitter.
They can.
Where can they find you on Twitter?
It's @ANKITANDON.
Wonderful. So at Ankita Tandon, there you go.
Anki Tandon.
Anki Tandon.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So thank you. That's our show.
Excuse me, भैया. Excuse me.
बोलिए मैडम.
मेन्यू में क्या है?
मेन्यू में सीन अनसीन है, पॉडकास्ट है, ऑन कोर्स है, साइरस है, मेड इन इंडिया, रीडिस्कवरी प्रोजेक्ट, एम्पावरिंग सीरीज, सेक्स वैक्स है, आईवीएम लाइक्स है, सिंप्लीफाइड है, कीपिंग इट क्वियर है, थिंग्स एंड डेस्टिनेशंस है, माय नेबर जकरबर्ग है और द फैन गराज है. आपको क्या चाहिए?
एक बार रिपीट कर देंगे क्या?
रिपीट नहीं करता हम. आप जाओ ivmpodcast.com पे और सुनो ये सब, या फिर डाउनलोड करो उनका ऐप. सब आपकी उंगलियों पे.